sure we keep everything on track. All right, so my name is Shelly Asplin. I'm part of the Gluten Free Omaha group, and tonight I am pleased to introduce my friend of 10 years, Megan Ringenberg. She's going to be discussing restaurant challenges. She has a degree in journalism and public relations, and she has put that to good use. I had fun preparing to introduce her tonight. She has a Gluten Free So Good blog. If you want to follow that, she'll probably tell you a little bit more about that. She was the communications coordinator for the National Celiac Organization. That's where Megan and I met, and I enjoyed working with her for several years. She's currently the chapter leader of Gluten Free Omaha, and she has been for quite some time, and we won't let her stop. So we enjoy Megan and all she's contributed to this group. She's also been published in Gluten Free Living several times. Her most recent publication was A Gluten-Free Guide to Maui. So if you haven't read that, it's a great read. So with that, I have more fun facts on Megan, but I'll let her take it away. Megan? Unmute yourself, Megan.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Shelly. Appreciate all those kind words. We're going to go ahead and get started. Pretty big topic at hand, eating gluten-free at restaurants. We're going to talk about several different topics as we navigate this. Please mute yourself. We're going to save questions for the end. If you have questions along the way, please send them to the group chat. We have a great raffle prize, $25 gift card to Shucks and $50 gift card to Hero. Thank you to them so much for helping us out with that. If you're interested in joining that, please send a private chat to the host with your name and address for the raffle, and we will mail those to the winners at the end. Thanks so much. So here's some of the topics we're going to tackle tonight. This is a really, really challenging part of being gluten-free. So we're being pretty frank, and we're going to talk about it from the perspective of people that have dealt with it. So I've been diagnosed celiac for 12 years now. This is something that has kind of gone good and bad in my life, and I've learned a lot over that time in dealing with restaurants. So we're going to go with this, and here's kind of the topics. We're going to talk about managing risk, choosing the restaurants that you may want to eat at, what kind of questions to ask when you're, and I kind of call it like really querying. You're kind of meeting your restaurant. You're trying to figure out how well does the manager receive the questions about gluten-free? What kind of demeanor does the chef have? And then going on to, okay, maybe you've picked a place that you feel like is safe. What kind of questions do I ask when I'm actually in the door to make sure that I'm met with a clean plate of good food in front of me so that I can enjoy my company and my social time? Some tips on choosing menu items, making sure that you make good selections from the get-go. Personal approach to how you order, how you approach management and staff is really key. There are tools out there that are available to use, so we'll talk about those. And then we'll kind of dive in a little bit more to what we're dealing with here in Omaha. Like how do we look at things from that perspective? So here we go. From a managing risk perspective, this is something that is very clearly unique to everyone. You really have to kind of weigh yourself and where you're at with your health to make those decisions. There's a situation where perhaps you can be your very strictest and you don't eat out and you only eat certified gluten-free foods and you have a dedicated gluten-free kitchen at home and you always bring food to family gatherings, et cetera, et cetera. That is really a pretty strict line. So now what every celiac and person that has gluten-related disorders is faced with is, where do I feel comfortable with that? Do I need to be at that strictest level? Where is my health at? Where is my mental state of mind at with managing food and being social with people? And I am kind of taking most of this aside from the current pandemic, because that adds a whole nother realm of complexity for all of us, I'm sure. But in a typical setting, this brings a lot of challenges to someone with celiac disease. So I think that most people have to look at their personal health, what their priorities are, and evaluate their risk. And the management of risk, really, that whole line comes back from my work at the National Celiac Association when we were the Celiac Brew Association. And when I was being trained by the director at the time, and she really sat down and she said, a lot of managing celiac disease is managing risk. And I had not, even though I had been celiac for a few years by that time, I had never really looked at it that way. And I think that she opened my eyes to that a lot and made me kind of get into that game of, okay, I'm going to weigh what my situation is right now. What does this mean to me? Do I need to eat at my in-laws' house for Thanksgiving and put myself at risk, or do I choose other smaller risk situations to manage my health, but also stay sane at the same time? And so I feel like that it's a balancing act. And so everybody is on a different tolerance level and has different priorities in their life. And I think that it really comes down to personal choices. And that takes time. So if you are a newly diagnosed individual, that is something that does come with time. And being someone that's 12 years out, I'm at the point where I know what my body can handle and what it can't. And I know where my priorities are. And I feel like for every individual, that's different. So it is frustrating. Absolutely. Many tears. Absolutely. And I think the social setting of eating is probably something that our society is so heavy into. And it's why part of this pandemic is so hard, because it's not easy to do that right now. But for us as celiacs, we've been doing that for a long time, right? Like the dining out has not always been easy, and the group setting eating has not always been easy. So I feel everyone's pain right now with that, because it is frustrating. But you do need to weigh mental health, because that is a huge factor with everyone. And so this is kind of my personal mantra as far as managing risk. It really does come down to personal decisions. From here throughout the presentation, we'll kind of talk more about like dealing with restaurants, but this is kind of like my personal health mantra. So moving on from there, when you're ready to eat out, if you're going to select a restaurant, always call ahead. I typically try to call between lunch and dinner, assuming they're willing to answer the phone. Don't call when it's busy. Don't call when it's lunchtime or dinner time. Ask to speak to the manager first. That's what I always do. The people that generally answer the phone from the get-go do not typically know what you are looking for as far as questions. I always look at the menu in advance and take a look at it and see what do I think I would like to eat if I was sitting down for dinner, or if I'm going to make a reservation for Saturday at 6 p.m. Like, what would I like to eat? So you can ask some specific questions about that item and say, okay, I'm interested in the steak. How do you prepare your steak? What is the grill surface like? Do you grill breads on that grill surface? So always having an idea in mind as to what you're looking at choosing is good. If you do go as far as making a reservation, please just confirm that they noted that your reservation has your specific dietary needs, whatever those may be. And if you don't get a good feel, and this has happened to me plenty of times, if you don't get a good feel for where they're at with your questions, if they're like, oh, I'm not sure, or oh, the chef's not available, he can't answer the questions. I mean, those are red flags. Those are, find a different place to look at for that week. And oh my gosh, this little guy over here on the left, he's my favorite. So my husband and I were lucky enough to go to the Bahamas, and Chef Suti is here on the left, and he's the executive chef of the Grand Hyatt Baha Mar. And I'll share my website later in the presentation, but I have a whole write-up on our trip to his hotel. And he is just, I mean, if you want anyone running your food, he's a dream. He had everything nailed down. He said he had the bulletin board up with all the different people that were arriving and all their different food allergies and where they were eating. And so I can't say enough about Hyatt's allergen program in general. But so that explains the photo of the chef. But here's some specific questions to ask. Do you have a separate area to prepare foods for gluten-free or allergy-free? Separate cutting boards or utensils? What are you putting on your grill? A lot of times those, like the marinades for the meats, going on a shared grill is a problem. Like they really need to have a dedicated space if they're cooking allergen-free items. And the fryer is kind of a whole nother animal. We'll get into that a little bit later, but obviously, like as someone with celiac or a high sensitivity to a gluten in a gluten-related disorder situation, you do not want to be eating food out of a fryer that's shared with gluten-full foods. So another comment to a lot of restaurants do have like the front of the house handles salads and soups. And so that's always kind of a good question to ask too, because if those croutons and salads are getting kind of thrown around in a different area and the servers aren't necessarily trained to handle that, that's always a good question to ask. And if maybe that's a yes, that's how we handle our salads, then you just kind of forgo the salad for that meal and hand it off to someone else at your table at the time. And then this is huge with me. I absolutely cannot stand when my food is delivered and somebody does not tell me that they went to all that work to make my meal, and then they just hand it to me and just say, oh, here you go. No, like that certainty and that deliverance of the meal being, here's your gluten-free walleye, or here's your gluten-free deep south risotto, or here's your gluten-free sushi platter. That is so huge. And if I could sit down with every restaurant in town, that is exactly what I tell them, because it's my pet peeve. Because I can, every time when they don't confirm that, I will sprout right back to them. And this was all prepared gluten-free. And a lot of times the people that deliver it have no idea. So really, as individuals with celiac and as individuals with gluten-free related disorders, we have a lot of power. I mean, these restaurants want our business. So be vocal and say and demand that they confirm that what you ordered is what they're giving you. So when it comes to ordering, and this is kind of the downside, and I'll be honest with that, you have to think simpler. Many choices that are naturally gluten-free are going to reduce your risk. If you're choosing a grain, whether it be a pasta or a rice or a quinoa, Those add complexity, and in multiple ways. First way that it adds complexity is the origination of the source. Most gluten-free pasta is labeled as such, and you could trust that out of the box that pasta was probably made correctly. The rice that restaurants serve, the quinoa that restaurants serve, that, as you're buying it in a grocery store, if you're celiac and have a gluten-related disorder, you should be choosing those grains to be labeled gluten-free. So when you get into the restaurant setting, that's just really hard. That is in the supply chain. It's hard for the large wholesale suppliers to disseminate that down to the restaurateur. So ask your questions about those. I will say I just avoid them because of kind of the fear of the unknown. With the pasta, it's the water, it's the strainer, it's the multiple levels of, is this all done correctly? With the grains, it's the origination of the grain. Is the grain really labeled gluten-free? And then it has to be cooked somehow too, right? So then there's that other step. A safer choice, a naturally gluten-free vegetable, like most all vegetables, if they're prepared in the proper way, clean pan, salt, pepper, oil, butter, or a packaged gluten-free item that maybe is pre-made somewhere else that comes to that restaurant safely, not toasted in a shared toaster, of course. I tend to lean toward a potato if I'm hungry for a starch at a restaurant, because they are naturally gluten-free. They don't require as much outside temperament to make them taste good. And then to fryers. So obviously fryers that are not dedicated are not safe for celiacs and individuals that have gluten sensitivities. All breaded and fried foods would be in question: meats, French fries. Tortilla chips is a terrible one because, oh my gosh, most everything about Mexicans should be gluten-free, but it's just that those darn flour chips and the flour tortillas that they sometimes like to flash fry that make it complicated. So there's not a lot of places here in Omaha that have gluten-free tortilla chips. So you've got to do your research and make sure that that stuff is safe. And sauces make a meal, and that can be very true from like, a more of a fast food setting to like a high-end setting. So I really question sauce ingredients, and I'm hard on my people, and I make them tell me what's in it. And if I'm not sure, I either have them leave it out or serve it on the side until I can look at it and see what it looks like, or I bring my own. And this is like, I'll bring like a little pack of hummus, or I'll bring a little thing of guacamole, because at least then like my simple food that I'm sacrificing for my like social setting with my friends seems a little less bland if I can like bring a little bit to like make it a little bit more to my taste. So if you're ordering gluten-free, definitely keep it concise and pleasant when you're discussing with the manager or the chef about the order. I could use your help. I have celiac disease. It's not a lifestyle choice. It's a diagnosed condition. I have to be very careful. My husband is my biggest advocate, and I was very clear with him from the get-go. I said, man, if we're going to eat out together, he's 6'4", 250 pounds. I'm like, I need you to stand up for me, because there's times when I'm tired of advocating for myself, and I'm sure everyone feels that way. It's just, you get tired of it. And so having that extra person to be like, man, she does really need it to be done really well. That helps a lot. So don't be afraid to do that. If you get a bad feeling about a restaurant, or they're not willing to help you, find the time to find another option. It's worth it. And always, when that restaurant meal is delivered, always double check, like, oh, is this my gluten-free bowl of chicken fried rice? And another positive would also be to make sure you follow up with positive and negative experiences with restaurants. They really do like to know. They're not afraid of being sued from an individual person. I think if they make an error and you have found that in them, they would want to know instead of you just keeping that quiet. So I'm very vocal about both instances when we dine out. So a couple tools. Find Me Gluten Free. It is a great starting point. It is a really good way to get a kind of good glance about what's going on in a community, what restaurants may be able to accommodate. You do have to read the reviews appropriately. Not everyone that's on it is celiac or has a gluten-related disorder per se. Some people are on it for a lifestyle choice. So you have to read those with caution. But especially with traveling, it is a great place to start. And if you find somebody with great reviews, it's worth a call and you talk to them and see where they're at. And if you're comfortable with what their restaurant has to offer. Local celiac groups are a great option for traveling. I think what I have just put on my blog is probably really all we have for Omaha right now, but here's a great example. Denver, their restaurant list is stupendous, and they have it kind of all like blocked out as far as risk levels. But we were coming down from skiing last January and decided at the last minute to stay overnight in Denver. And I looked at their website, found a restaurant called Just Be in downtown Denver, completely dedicated gluten-free, amazing. And there's nothing like being a celiac and walking into a completely dedicated gluten-free restaurant. That I've been there, and I've been to one in Hawaii, and it's so great. So using those resources when you are traveling can be really helpful, especially from good sources like local support groups. Restaurant cards, which is basically like a card that kind of explains what your needs are. Those are available in foreign languages and great tool for traveling, especially if you're going out of the country and you don't speak the same language. The NEMA sensor, also a tool. I did put a link on here for the Gluten Free Watchdog's position statement on NEMA sensor. I would not, going off of her recommendation, and that's Tricia Thompson, who's the gluten-free dietitian, that's not something I would recommend people use as a tool just to determine what's safe for dining out. You can check that link later to see if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, but it's not recommended by experts in the celiac community at this time. So where we're at right now in Omaha and Lincoln, we could be in a better situation. I feel like we have enough population to have a better situation for the gluten-free scene. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. There's been a couple startups that have tried to do things, and they just have not gotten off the ground real solidly at this point. But here is where I'm kind of going to narrow down our certification options. So Shelley and I had the great pleasure of getting to know Becky Moreland, who is the kind of leader of the Beyond Celiac Great Kitchens restaurant program. They also do some training on a larger scale for commercial kitchens. And she has trained the following restaurants here in our community, Shucks being one of them, and then 3 in Lincoln. Becky's actually located in Lincoln. Her husband owns Sportscasters, which is a kind of a sports bar, but they do have gluten-free options there. So if you're in Lincoln, I feel like that would probably be a pretty reasonable choice for you also, if you're interested in some sports bar food. But here's the programs, the restaurants that have gone through her program specifically. And then this list is more of kind of a personal list between Shelly, Mariah, and I, and kind of our experiences. And not all of us have dined at all of these restaurants, and some of us have had pluses and minuses at all of them. But I think that along with this list goes the note of be your own advocate. You do have to make sure that you are proactive and take your own health in your hands, and don't be afraid to do that.
Megan, Megan, this is Shelly, and we have about 3 minutes left. So you have great information. I'm trying to decide if we can finish in that time frame, or if maybe we should just have everybody log on back in again.
I have one more slide.
Perfect.
So it depends on how many questions we have, I guess.
Okay.
But so questions, and then we're going to draw the winner. So make sure you send your name and your address to the group chat so we can get all those logged, and we'll communicate that information out. And I really do want to thank Shucks and Hero for sponsoring us, because they have been winners through all this, and definitely a big push for everyone to support their local restaurants. I know it's hard when you feel like you can't eat out really that many places, but these are two locally owned groups that are really trying to do a good job here in Omaha. So
thank you, Megan. Since I've collected people who have sent in their names and addresses into the chat and have done the random number generator, so completely random of who is our winner. And our winner of the $25 gift card to Shucks is Brandy Colgrove. And our winner for our $50 gift card to Hero is Christy Flattery Calling. So congratulations to our winners. I have your addresses down, and those will be mailed to you. We did have one quick question in the chat. Is anyone aware of any mental health support groups that are focused on celiac disease or gluten intolerance? I am not aware of any specific mental health support groups. But having a community support like this group is definitely something that can help people. I don't know if Shelly or Megan, you know any other specifics?
I would think that we're the closest thing that we have available right now. We're down to less than 1 minute. If anyone has any other things, they can email us at gfomaha@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, we do have some primary care providers we could certainly recommend for somebody if they were interested in a referral to a medical practitioner.
Absolutely. And watch the Facebook page for updates on our January events. And watch your emails too. We have some fun things coming up. So stay tuned, everybody, and thank you for coming.